Today we're back in the darkroom and we're making contact prints. They're very simple to make. They just allow you to see your negative as a positive, so it's easier to decide what frame it is that you like. So set of contact prints, helpful and easy to make. Now, when I worked at papers, we didn't always make contacts. So at the smaller papers, the photographers could pick right off the negative, looking at the negative. And the editors would sometimes come over and they were used to looking at negatives and they could pick the frame off the negatives too. But when I worked at bigger papers, the editors wanted to see contacts. So you made contacts of everything. They're simple to do. People tend to overcomplicate it. Here's how I've been doing it for 40 years. Probably not the right way to do it. There's probably a much better way to do it. However, this is how I've been doing it. Now you need a little bit of equipment. So you're going to need a tray. This is an oversized tray. This is for washing. So this would be an 11 by 14 tray for doing 11 by 14 prints. So I need this washing tray, and an oversized tray is nice for washing because then the prints don't stick together as you just have them in the wash. The other thing you need are 3 trays for chemistry. Now these are 8 by 10 trays that I'm going to use. I print 8 by 10 the most, so I have a set of trays for doing 8 by 10, and then I have a different set for 11 by 14 and a different set for 20 by 24. You could get away with just one set, but you'd be using a lot of chemistry if you just had a set of trays for 20 by 24 and you were just making some 5 by 7s. It'd be overkill with the chemistry. So I tend to use the 8 by 10 trays the most. If I was only going to buy one set, I get 8 by 10 trays. So the other thing you need tongs. So I don't like to put my hands in the chemistry, so I have 3 tongs for developer, stop, bath, fix, and I actually have a few more that I use for the wash, and also I use some other chemicals sometimes, toners and that, so I have tongs for that as well. But you basically need the 3 tongs, the 3 trays, and a system for washing. So the chemistry that I use is Ilford chemistry. So for the developer, I use Ilford multigrade developer, and then I use their stop bath and their fix. And I generally mix up 2 liters of working solution. I find, this chemistry is going to exhaust itself anyways before I use it. So I don't mind having a little bit more in the tray. So I have found 2 liters a great amount of chemistry to use. Sometimes I might just use 1 liter of stop bath, but overall I used 2 liters of chemistry. And a lot of times I'll process and print, and then at the end I'll develop any film that I have and I'll use the same stop bath and fixer. So I'll just get the film developer out and then I can use that chemistry a little bit more. So I use the Patterson graduate cylinders. It allows me to measure in milliliters. I need to measure small amounts like 50 milliliters, and I need to measure 950 milliliters. So I've got a selection of these. These are Patterson. They'll last forever. All of this stuff lasts forever. The trays, they're going to last you forever. I've had mine 30 or 40 years. Now, if I was doing it again, maybe I would buy stainless steel. They're easier to wash. You could get them. You can't get them at a photo store anymore, but you could get them at a commercial kitchen place or maybe a medical supply place. Stainless steel trays, they'd be nice. They'd be a little bit expensive, but these Patterson ones, they're going to last you forever, literally 30 or 40 years. So I think they're good to go with. So you get your 3 chemicals mixed up, and then you've got the other tray for the wash, and you've got your tongs all ready to go. Now the next thing I want to talk about is the actual contact printer. Now I use a piece of glass. It's a 1/4 inch thick. It's regular window glass. I've had the edges rounded so I don't cut myself. I've had 2 of these in my career, 2 pieces of glass. I dropped one, I don't know, just the other day about 35 years ago. And I've been using this glass for decades, so it'll hold up. And I have a little board. It's like 1 inch plywood. It's the same size, and that just protects the glass as I'm putting it away, keeps it from getting scratched, and allows me to kind of line up under my enlarger. I put the board there, and then I know where to put the negatives. So this will last you forever. Get the edges rounded just so that you're not cutting yourself. So you get the board underneath the enlarger, and I put my negatives on it, and I get everything kind of lined up. Then I turn the lights off. I slide my paper underneath these negatives, and I put the glass down, and it kind of makes this sandwich holding the negatives nice and flat. So that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to hold the negatives flat with the glass lined up and kind of trim and proper looking. Then you turn the enlarger on. Maybe it's 8 seconds, maybe it's 10 seconds, something like that. Then enlarger goes off. you pull the paper out, run it through the developer. So there's two theories about making the contacts. Theory one is you make a perfect set. So if the contacts are too dark or too light, you modify it so that you have a perfect set of contacts, and then you can kind of gauge and look at them and so make your selections. And if I was doing that for someone else's negatives, I would make a perfect set of contacts. So I would adjust the exposure to get them perfect. The second theory is you always make your contacts the same. So let's say it's 10 seconds. In my case, it's 7 seconds, but let's say it was 10 seconds. The enlarger is always at the same height, always the same aperture on the lens. If you make it always the same, now what happens is when you go to print your prints, you can look at the contacts and you can say, oh, this one was a little bit light, so I'm going to need to tweak the exposure. I already know I have to tweak the exposure because my contact is a little bit light, or it's a little bit dark, or it's a little bit contrasty. So if you make them consistent from time to time, you'll be able to use that information back when you're making your actual prints. So that's how I like to do it. Always the same. In my case, 7 seconds, but it's always the same exposure time. And then when I make the prints, I have more knowledge. But if I was doing it for someone else and they just wanted to look at their negatives and see what they had, I would make a perfect set of it with the perfect exposure. When I do it my way, sometimes they're not perfectly exposed. They're too dark or they're too light because I'm trying to know how do they compare against everything else I've done in the past. So with 120 film, I lay it on the board, turn the lights off, put my photographic paper underneath it, glossy side up. The film is emulsion down, right? So that I've got the emulsion of the film against the emulsion of the paper. Keep it all flat with the piece of glass, hit my exposure time, pull it all apart, develop the film. That works out great. Now to make it a little more professional, Patterson makes proofers. So the Patterson proofer, this one that you can see here, this is for 120, and it has a little groove that you can slide the edge of the negative in, and it keeps everything aligned up. Great in theory. I've had this forever. I never use it because it's very difficult to slide the film underneath that little black line. I have one for 35 mil. It works fantastic. But in 120, it's just, I don't know if it's just the one I have or what the problem is, but it takes too long. It'll take you 15 minutes to load this thing with 120. I mean, who's got time for that? But I do use something similar. Again, this is the Patterson proofer. This one's for 35 mil, and it's easy to load. And you would load it in daylight and then turn the lights off and put your paper underneath it. So you load up the proofer, turn the lights off, put your paper emulsion against emulsion, close it, snap it. Now the glass is holding the negatives perfectly flat, and you use your 10-second exposure. The advantage of this is that there's text that goes from the proofer on there, and it just looks very professional and trim. I wish it worked for the 120. It's too hard to load, but for the 35 mil, it seems to work great. Now the other contact that you could do is from a large negative, so let's say 8x10. So I'm going to show you a couple of different tricks here. Now again, with 8x10, if I'm using the board and the glass, I line my board up so it's underneath the enlarger, and then I'm going to I've got my negative right there, and my glass is all ready to go. Turn the lights off, so now I make my sandwich. I put the paper on the bottom, I put the negative on top of it, emulsion down, so that the emulsions of the paper and the emulsion of the film are touching, and then the glass just holds it all flat. 10-second exposure, fantastic. You've made a contact print off of 8x10. In the developer, 1 minute in the developer, and then stop and fix. Now these darkroom shots, there seems to be some breathing from the lens. This is ISO 50,000. I mean, that wasn't even a number years ago, like 50,000 ISO. So this is ISO 50,000, but it's so dark that the focus isn't able to lock on. The glass is confusing it, the liquid in the trays is confusing it, so there's like this little breathing effect, which is very annoying. I'll try to do better next time. But at ISO 50,000, shooting in the darkroom, I thought, wow, I can't even believe we got an image. Now, when you look at your contact from the 8x10, if you just want to see how it looks, and now you're going to mark it up for cropping, or you're going to, file it away. This is how you want to file your stuff. Fantastic. If you want the 8x10 print to be your final destination, so this is what you're going to take to the gallery. You're going to take contact prints, or you're going to have a show of contact prints. So if you're going to use contact prints, I think you're better off, instead of using a piece of glass and my old piece of plywood, I think you're better off with a thing called a contact printer frame. I don't use it very often. When I shot 8x10, I did use it a bit. When I first shot 8x10, I thought I would just make contacts, but then I decided to buy an enlarger because my stuff needed to be cropped and worked and improved. So this contact printer frame, it allows you to make great contacts from 8x10 or smaller negatives. It's not really designed for regular contacts off 35mm. This is for one 8x10 negative. So this contact printer frame, easy to use. On the back, it's got these spring-loaded back. So you open that up, and now you're in the dark. You put your negative in, emulsion side up. You put your paper in, emulsion side down, so that's emulsion to emulsion. And then you push this backing on and spring-load it so it's nice and tight, and it keeps it perfectly flat. Flip it over, give it the exposure. You're off to the races. Now, the thing that's great about this is sometimes you make contacts with, like, say, if you're doing platinum printing or some alternative printing, you could set all this up in the darkroom and then take it out to your light source. Sometimes the light source is UV or sunlight or whatever, and it's nice to have this all kind of locked down, ready to go on this printer frame. Now you take it out to the sun, and it's not shifting around and moving around. The other thing I like about it is if you're going to burn and dodge, so you're making a contact print, you could still dodge a little bit during the exposure. If it's a 10-second exposure, you can still hold back. Especially you would want to do that if the contact print is your final destination. That's what you're taking to the gallery. Or you can burn it in a bit. So, it's a basic 10-second exposure, and then I went another 20 seconds just burning this in a little bit, giving a little bit of darkness, bringing those highlights down a little bit. So even though it's a contact, you can manipulate it and make a great print. And for some people, the contact is the final destination. So, as I said, easy to do. Making contact prints allows you to look at your negatives in a positive way, or maybe the actual contact print is the final thing that you're trying to do. I've even seen shows where people had 120 contact prints framed, like matted and framed. They're too small, but people did it. Makes more sense for an 8x10. You know what looks great? Whole plate. Whole plate is the smallest you'd really want to go if you're doing contact prints. Whole plate is a weird size. No one really shoots that anymore, but it's a wonderful format. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention, and I tried this in my darkroom, but I couldn't get it to work. So lights are off. You get everything set up. You've got your sandwich with the glass, the negative, the paper, ready to go. And you just flick the lights on and off. So in my darkroom, flicking them on and off, I couldn't get it quick enough. So the prints were too dark. But if you had a less bright room, or maybe you were using one of those inexpensive hardware store aluminum reflectors, and you just put like a 40 watt or a 50 watt bulb in it, and maybe you hung it up a bit, you could just turn that light on and make your exposure. So this is the simplest thing possible. You have your negative, you make it with a piece of glass, you make it into a sandwich, and you just turn this little light on. It could literally be a bare bulb hanging from a wire. You turn that on for 10 seconds, whatever it takes. Maybe it's 12 seconds, 15 seconds, and then you turn it off. And while it's exposing, you could still be dodging. You could still burn in a little bit. It's the simplest thing possible, making these contact prints. And 100 years ago, they were doing it literally just with a bare bulb, like a 10 or 15 watt bulb hanging from a wire. It's that simple. You don't have to make it complicated. You make the sandwich, you get some light on it, you process your paper. Making contacts allows you to see what they look like as a positive, but if the contact is your final destination, that's a great solution too. That's how I do it.